Hey guys, thought I would take a minute to just describe what happened to me. This is unscripted. If my medical terminology is wrong, it is. This isn't to prove anything or teach anything. Um, we'll just take it from there because some people have asked me. So, back on December 2nd, I don't even know the freaking date today. It's a couple days after Christmas. Um, I started to get a pain in my stomach that I would say felt like if you've ever started to get an ulcer or maybe a bad gas pain right behind my belly button. Didn't move very much, but it kind of was a pulsating pain. Didn't change much, just kind of went up and down. And quite honestly, earlier in the day I ate some stupid ass Taco Bell, so I was just figuring, well, I got a little enteritis or some crap, whatever, no big deal. And it began to start to get a little worse and a little worse and a little worse, and the pulses got deeper and stronger and harder. And before I knew it, I was racing my car to the emergency room. In fact, when I left, it wasn't even that bad. Otherwise, I would have called the ambulance or something. But suddenly, I find myself in my car half a mile from the hospital, and I knew something was really wrong. So I drove right up to the front doors to not be too dramatic, and sort of just fell out of the car. Well, fast forward a couple of days later, and I was in a pre-op that I was signing my life away. I felt like I was trying to put my initials in all these boxes, and the doctors just kept saying, "I need your signature here for exploratory emergency surgery." Um, they still didn't know exactly what they were going to run into, but they needed to open me up because my vitals had taken a shit. My blood pressure had fallen, my temperature was falling, everything was really strange. So, needless to say, I'll leave some of the details aside that happened, but as I was signing it, some very violent things happened. And from there, I lose my memory until I wake up in a room with a tube called a GI tube coming out of my nose. And I can see the fluid. You know, if you look at if you like close one eye and look out your other eye, you can see your nostril that you never pay attention to. Well, there was a tube with all these, like, as colorful as Skittles, just pulling everything out of my insides, and I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. They had cut and made an incision from about the middle of my hip, between my hips, a couple inches below my belly button, about 5 inches below my belly button, all the way up to below my sternum. They did that because they found that I had my small intestine had wrapped around itself and created kind of what could be described as a knot. Now, the doctors never use this as an analogy, but I will. It's kind of like when a scary clown ties up a balloon to look like a dog, maybe. So I had my intestines twisted, and there was a lot of pressure being pushed into my intestines from above, and it created a bubble. Well, that bubble, it burst. So what I was feeling when they were going in for the surgery was that rupture. And when it ruptured, it tore a line through about 3.5 feet worth of intestine and opened it right up. And all of my gastric juices and all that infection poured out into my abdomen. The doctor then made an assessment, obviously. They cut about 7 feet, a little less than 7 feet, and reattached the good spots to the good spots. They took all the diseased and dead out, which, by the way, he had told me, he said, had we been even a minute later, you'd be dead, because all of my blood work was showing that my colon wasn't dead yet, or my intestines weren't dead yet. When your intestines die, you only have a few hours to live. So he's like, I can't understand. He's in so much pain. Long story short, there is that some people failed with the CAT scans and the MRIs and so forth. But luckily, they did open me up, they cleaned the infection out. They stapled where they tied up my intestines, attached everything the way it was supposed to be. It was about a 5 or 6 hour surgery. I took multiple bags of blood, and then they put in, you know what's funny? I never counted my staples up the front of me. I'm thinking I had between 30 and 40, right? All the way up the front. And then what they did too is they put a tube in from my right side, they put a tube right into my abdomen on my right side, right above my hip, and it came out the other side. And on each side there was these balls. It was the weirdest thing, like these balls you could squeeze, and it made these juices run back and forth. That was my drain that drained my abdomen of all that gross and vile fluid that had been now inside my abdomen. I had that for like 2 weeks. And by the way, when they take that out, pray to God, if that ever happens to you, that you can be put to sleep, anesthetized, something. Because to feel a tube being pulled out of your intestines or out of your abdomen is the most fucked up thing you'll ever feel in your life. Not necessarily pain, but absolutely horrible. They all told me, oh, the worst pain you're gonna feel is when we pull out the catheter. That catheter out of your wiener's nothing. Do that 10 times a day. Don't care. That was bad. And the day they removed my GI tube, yeah, they kind of fooled me with that one. I had this group of surgeons I called the aliens, because they would sneak into the middle of the night and do weird shit to me and leave again. And they came in one night like usual, and I heard them chit-chatting, and they said, hey, we're ready to remove the gastric tube. Now, if you've ever had one, it's a really weird sensation, because like you're not allowed to eat or drink anything, and when you do, toward the end they were letting me, everything you drank came right back up the tube out of your nose. And yes, you do feel that tube in your nose and in your throat a bit, but it's not as bad as you think. I think your body adjusts to it like anything else. For the first 2 days, it was a living hell, but my brain started to ignore it. And what you end up with is this kind of a dry throat. You don't feel it every time you swallow. You don't, it looks miserable when you look at a person with it, but your body kind of loses the feeling around it, so it's not so bad. Now, I was never allowed to eat or anything. I could drink. I used one of those little star sponges to wet my lips and so forth, and I cheated badly. They said, don't saturate it and drink it. Screw that. You just feel so thirsty all the time that I was constantly cheating. But I seen my little machine sucking it back up out of my gut, so I didn't give a shit. And to that note too, sometimes the tube would accidentally attach to the side of your stomach. And if you've ever used a vacuum cleaner and it gets stuck on something, like the bottom of a couch cushion or something, that's exactly what it's doing. So I learned that if I moved my head just a little to the right or a little to the left, that I could actually manipulate that tube and actually get it to move just a bit to get off of that stomach wall. Not that it became a game, but it became a challenge to move it around a little bit. So anyway, yeah, that day the aliens came in, and they didn't tell me they were going to pull it out till the last second. They're like, hey, we're going to pull it out today. You're doing better. We want to get you off this tube. We're going to get you eating and drinking again. And I'm like, okay. She said, we're going to do this on the count of 1, 2, and boom. It was like Indiana Jones and his whip. They pulled that damn thing out. It was as long, it felt like the wrath of God getting pulled out of my face. I gagged, about hurled on myself. And after about 3 or 4 seconds of the sting, all I wanted to do was just touch my own face again without having a contraption on it. It was one of the most surreal, weird things. My wife recorded it. I screamed like some kind of dumb 3-year-old. I've never heard myself scream like that before, and I hope to God I never do again. I watched the video once and said, I'm never going to watch that one again. So from there, they just kept watching my my blood levels. I did have a really high white count, but during this entire time, I just didn't want to quit. I struggled being paralyzed, having no stomach muscles, so you cannot even lift your body. And I tried the physical therapy, and at one point in time I quit, and I'm like, I can't do it, stop pushing me. But I continued to move my feet, my toes, my ankles. And of course my wife was there the whole time too. She's such a sweetheart. Her being there for me. I never thought being in a hospital would be that difficult. I didn't even know what to expect, but I knew right away that I needed her there, and she was there every goddamn night, even though she had just went through sepsis from kidney stones a month prior. I'll never be able to repay that woman back. With her being there, it gave me the strength, and I wasn't so afraid. And I'm a pretty tough guy mentally, but there were times when I was petrified, man. I mean, when you look down and see tubes coming out of your junk, coming out of your belly, you got tubes in your face, and they're talking foreign languages around you. And the only thing that helped me at the beginning, I'll tell you this, I was on hydromorphone, which is Dilaudid, and on morphine and fentanyl all at the same time. It was the only thing they could do to keep my pain level down. It was so severe. And the tough part about that is, in order, after you have, when your intestines are sectioned or damaged, or they remove it for, say you had cancer or anything else, you can't be on heavy painkillers because your intestines need to wake back up, almost just like at birth. And so you got a choice. You can either be pain-free, which, trust me, those three together in your IV, you don't feel much shit at all. Or you can cut it back. Now, at first they gave me no choices. They were giving me shots into my arms like every 15 or 20 minutes. And then eventually they put me on this really cool thing called a PICC line, where they ran tubes from my arm right into my heart that fed my heart the nutrients it needed to survive as my digestive system healed. Well, they were then put, and I believe it was in my PICC line, they gave me a little button I could push. When it turned green, that means I could inject myself with all the goodies. But they told me, you're gonna have control over this. So what'll happen is, when you feel that pain, you go ahead and press that button, but we want you to wait 30 seconds, wait a minute, whatever you can, challenge yourself. So at first they had a stop on it. There was like once every 4 minutes. So every 4 minutes, I could hit myself again. And trust me, that's all I was doing. I was just jamming that button like, if you've ever played Hungry Hippos before, that's exactly what I was doing. And I was hallucinating. I had 2 Irish friends that lived behind my television that I had great conversations with. There were horses too that lived in my ceiling. The walls would move. It was an absolutely fantastic experience, and my pain would go away for just a second. But I was just enough there to know you can't do this forever, and you're gonna have to pay the piper. So I'd start to extend the time in which I hit the button, and they would also extend the time in which I was allowed to have it. So I went from a few minutes to like 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 over the course of days. It finally got to the point where, my timer at one point, I remember being at 21 minutes, and I could make it 45 minutes. But as those segments of intestine became back to life, think of the worst stomach cramp you could possibly have. It spasms, and it's like you can feel it. Like, the only good thing is, like, oh my God, I'm coming, it's coming back to life. Don't hit the fucking button. Let that shit heal. And it became motivating to go a little further and keep exercising. Well, cool thing is that they told me that back in the beginning of the summer, they're like, you're going to be here through February. And yeah, that wasn't going to fly. I fought like a son of a bitch. And I found motivation any way I could. As soon as I could lift my body just a little bit, that was so inspiring. That boy, I can actually sit up a little bit and lay right back down, completely exhausted, like I ran a mile. The exhaustion, my body had wasted away, laying there in bed. I was down to 103 pounds when I left the hospital. But I knew you just got to walk. You got to walk. So here I am now, getting toward the end of December. I have no right being out yet, but I passed all their criteria. My blood, my white blood count lowered. I'm even off of antibiotics. I've been living on Ensure and bone broth, beef bone broth. Beef bone broth seems to soothe my internals. Like, I can't explain it. It's like soft water just cleaning, is the way I can visualize it. So I've been using a lot of that, taking my vitamins that they gave me. They gave me all these prescription vitamins, like things to help my heart and all that shit. So that was good. And I'm here. I'm here now. I'm not completely out of the woods, but I am sitting outside my backyard in shorts and enjoying the sunset a little bit. And I just felt like talking kind of unrehearsed. If anybody actually listens to this whole thing all the way to the end, thank you for that. Maybe it's somehow medicinal to me. I don't expect that. But anyway, I'll post some things again and maybe some photographs. I do have a GoFundMe that has a picture of me in the bed and all that when they had the tubes all in me and shit. I'm not going to share that here. There's no reason to. I don't want anybody's money. But I would like to share my story a little bit because it doesn't always turn out this well. In fact, I was told that 5% of the people that this happened to die or live. Only 95% die, only 5% live. The biggest reason I survived is because I was in pretty good shape when this happened. I was young, and I was in pre-op, where my shit blew up, but I was right there on a table where they could cut me open. So it was chance, it was God, it was a lot of things. But only 5% of the people who have this happen to live is a scary, scary, scary thing to think about. I'm really lucky to be where I'm at. So anyway, I'll post something later. If somebody reads this and has questions, please ask. I'd be glad to answer them. Through all of this adventure, I have to admit, with my little bit of medical background, there was a lot of fascinating things going on around me, especially the PICC line. If you've ever heard of a PICC line, that's some Star Trek shit, man. You know, to be able to feed my body right into my heart. I was even awake when they put it in. They put it in your body with magnets. It's pretty badass. But anyway, there you go.